Okay. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada. All glories to our revered speaker, His Grace MANIDHARA Prabhu. And all glories to our Samud Vaishnava devotees. Devotees, we thank you all for being here today. Today being Monday, another beginning day of the week. And we are blessed. We have one of our revered uncles, His Grace MANIDHARA Prabhu, whom we've been missing for quite some time. But today we are very much fortunate. We have his blessings and association. So we encourage devotees to be very attentive, and we're going to enjoy his wisdom. Prabhuji, we're going to put the verse on the screen and then you may take it over from here. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Do we have okay audio? Is it understandable?
Very clear, yes.
Yes?
Yes.
I have a very weak audio from your side. If you could tune it up, maybe.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
So we can start?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this is from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 4, Text 23. Shri Shukavacha iti udhavat upakarnya suhridam dusham vadham jnanena shamayat kshata shokam utpatitam buddha. Translation. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, after hearing from Uddhava all about annihilation of his friends and relatives, the learned Vidura pacified his overwhelming bereavement by dint of his transcendental knowledge. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Vidura was informed that the result of the battle of Kurukshetra was the annihilation of his friends and relatives, as well as the destruction of the Yadu dynasty, and also the passing away of the Lord. All these hurled him into bereavement for the time being, but because he was highly advanced in transcendental knowledge, he was quite competent to pacify himself by enlightenment. As it is stated in Bhagavad Gita, due to our long association with bodily relationships, bereavement on account of annihilation of friends and relatives is not at all astonishing. But one has to learn the art of subduing such bereavement with higher transcendental knowledge. The talks between Uddhava and Vidura on the topic of Krishna began at sunset, and Vidura was now further advanced in knowledge due to his association with Uddhava. So once again, the shloka. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, after hearing from Uddhava all about the annihilation of his friends and relatives, the learned Vidura pacified his overwhelming bereavement by dint of transcendental knowledge. So this shloka deals with something which we encounter every day, but maybe have a little bit hard time sometimes to handle, and that's emotions. I remember when I joined this movement in 1972 in Germany, if I would say in a temple, I feel or I think, I will be immediately shut down. What do you mean? You think, you are mental. And you feel, you must be in bodily consciousness. This was actually the mood those days. You don't feel, you don't think, you execute the order. So, yeah, in the terms of bodily consciousness, we have to be cautious, of course, what we feel and what we think. But Srila Prabhupada showed us very evidently that devotee is not at all bereft of feelings and thoughts. Prabhupada commanded and demanded that we think. Manishina is called. Devotee is thoughtful. That means he actually has to follow consciously and knowingly. Therefore, we have here in the shloka that by the sunset, during this discussion, everybody was more in knowledge. So this is obviously thinking is absolutely necessary. In regards to the feeling, well, Prabhupada, there's one beautiful lecture where he says, devotees, they feel also sad. Bereavement is mentioned here. They feel even desperate. Like example, if a very dear friend dies, we don't have any more his association. I mean, we have a Vaishnava songs from Narottam Das Thakur, which are full of despair, extremely emotional. You open Chaitanya Charitamrita, the book is loaded with emotions, loaded with feelings. But the difference is that Krishna is always in the center. That's one thing. And another thing, Prabhupada said, even devotee may be temporarily affected by sadness, bereavement, grief. The difference between materialist and the devotee is the devotee is aware all this is temporary. And we see it happening all the time. You know, people go to the funeral, everybody is sad. And the next day, life goes on. People forget. People overcome the sadness. Or, due to severe attachment, they go completely mad. It is also can be demonstrated from the Kama society how when people lose somebody suddenly due to some tragic incident or something like this, they become completely mad. And they actually, they cannot get back to the normal or ordinary life they lived before. So this is actually all due to attachment. So feelings are there in a personality of a devotee, but there is no attachment. That's the difference. Devotee knows, yes, I feel now. And it is very sad. When you study Prabhupada's correspondence, Prabhupada, like example, gets obviously a news that a devotee, something tragic happened to them. And Prabhupada writes, yes, I am shocked. Well, you can say, how can a pure devotee be shocked by a disappearance of another body? No, actually, that feeling of sudden mishap or something very bad happening, that feeling is there naturally. But devotees don't allow themselves to be victimized. Therefore, actually, it's wonderfully written here. Vidura, by a dint of transcendental knowledge, he overcame this. And he understood, he could control his feelings, and he understood that nothing can happen without Krishna's will. Outside of Krishna's, nothing is outside of Krishna's jurisdiction. So therefore, devotee knows, yes, this is not nice. Something horrible happened even, but nothing can happen without Krishna facilitating it. So it has a reason. There must be a reason. And we have the information right away from the beginning in the Bhagavad Gita that this, from the highest planets to the lowest planets of this universe, it's a places of misery. birth, old age, death, and disease, full of sudden events, surprises. We don't know what happens tomorrow. Like it is evident, this is evident I live sometime in this body, let's say 72 years, and I saw sudden changes happening around me, both materially and spiritually as well. Yes, I had to witness God brothers departing, which I would never expect they would leave. I had to witness, in a material sense, invasion of armies. Like when I was 13 years old, suddenly I was living I'm born in Czech Republic. Suddenly Czechoslovakia at that time was invaded by a Russian army, rolled over in one night. You are now sitting in Africa. Well, couldn't be a better place to demonstrate how suddenly something can happen. Africa is basically the image of Africa in the West is a place of disasters. I don't know if it's correct, or I never was in Africa, but the image Africa emanates to outside. Well, if you want to go see a disaster, you have to go to Africa. Suddenly it's catastrophic heat, just climate and everything. And then you have all this political disturbances and all this. We don't know what happens tomorrow. So naturally, there will be feelings. And naturally, these feelings, they don't have to be only positive, they're negative. They can be also positive. Like one of the most ferocious feelings you may have is called falling in love. Prabhupada said, fall in love, fall in lust. That's basically the spiritual logic behind the whole thing. But it can drive a person completely mad. That feeling is so powerful. It cannot be denied. It's so powerful. And why are these feelings we are experiencing through this material body, while we are living in the material body, so powerful? Well, the reason is they are all reflections from our original spiritual feelings. Now you can imagine, if the reflection is so powerful, how powerful must be the original feeling? If we go mad here by bereavement, we go mad by love or lust, how much more powerful the spiritual feeling must be. What a life they have over there. We get some glimpses from the scriptures about that. You read Nectar of Devotion, and we have some reports from the spiritual world. But with our material senses, it's very difficult to imagine what an emotion that is. The difference is, how do we realize we have a spiritual emotion? Quite simple. Our eagerness to serve Krishna is increasing. And how do we realize we have material emotion? Our eagerness to serve Krishna is decreasing. It's quite simple to see that. Yeah. When love becomes lust, and all these different emotions are turned towards the body, it results in a natural and automatic loss of desire to serve Krishna. And spiritual emotions, they are Ananda Buddhi Vardhanam. That means they're actually more and more increasing. How do we experience spiritual emotions? By being connected to Krishna. And how we get connected to Krishna? We mean to his internal energy. External energy, we are already connected. But how we are going to actually experience these real feelings, spiritual feelings? That happens in the presence of a pure devotee. He is the uniting, connecting link. So we experience in the presence of Srila Prabhupada, we experience real spiritual feelings. Ecstasy. The word ecstasy is, I know there's some drug in the material world they call ecstasy. Well, I would like to see that kind of ecstasy. You are so ecstatic and at the end you die. That's the material ecstasy. You are dying. No, in a spiritual life, spiritual ecstasy means you come more and more alive. And that we saw happening in the presence of Srila Prabhupada. Now, it is not restricted to some Prabhupada disciple. It is not restricted to some limited group of devotees. Anybody who gets connected to the real spiritual source can experience the spiritual ecstasy and this bliss. When one is properly engaged and properly situated. What is the ultimate situation where we find ourselves properly situated? Is in a position of that we are eternal servant of Krishna. And how does it manifest? Well, we are the servant of the servant of the servant of the Guru Parampara. Once connected, then spiritual emotions will arise. And they will grow stronger the more we get connected. And therefore, you just go back and look at some recordings of Srila Prabhupada, look at some footage, and just watch the devotees around Prabhupada going mad with ecstasy. I mean, I experienced personally in Prabhupada's presence emotions which were beyond anything. It cannot be even reproduced. I couldn't even today sit down and instantly reproduce such an emotion. It would be difficult. I cannot do that. But just by remembering Srila Prabhupada, and just by remembering Prabhupada and automatically Krishna, yes, one can develop actually spiritual emotions. And these spiritual emotions, they are also symbolized, or they can be recognized by absence of material desires. That means when our emotion is directed towards Krishna and the pure devotee, then our material inspiration is automatically not only decreasing, it's becoming invalid. Even in the presence of a temptation, which will be there automatically in the material world, the senses and the heart, above all, the heart, doesn't get activated because it's already filled up. It's already filled up with devotional feelings. And the feelings, they don't come from brain. Actually, it's always pathetic to see the scientific community. These arrogant fools, they think they can even chemically define feelings. They can boil it down to some chemical formula. The chemical formula for love. The chemical formula for anger. No, they see only the symptoms. Yeah, there are symptoms in the body. But to boil it down to some mere chemicals is impossible, because these feelings come from the heart. And heart, this is a mystery for scientists or for any materialist. Heart, they know. It's a place where so many things are originating from. But what it does and what is there, well, ultimately they end up just seeing only a bloody pump. But heart is not a bloody pump. There are so many things. Now, since we are talking about bloody pump, just physically spoken, heart is incredible organ. Now, it's a muscle. Everybody knows it's a muscle, it's a pump, which pumps blood through the whole body, to the last corner of the body. What a pressure, But not too much pressure and not too little pressure. Now we have a little low blood pressure and high blood pressure, but generally a normal person will get the blood pumped through the whole body. That's just one aspect. But how is it possible that a muscle is moving in such a short intervals, maybe for 100 years, maybe for 90 years? Now you take any muscle of your body, your leg or your arm, and you do like this, for 100 years. Well, you cannot last even for 10 minutes. You get tired. But that heart never gets tired. It's pumping, moving with such energy. that energy cannot be understood materially. This is actually, we know in the heart there is a soul, there is super soul. And Prabhupada ultimately said, yes, Krishna consciousness is happening in the heart. When the heart is rightly situated, then automatically the brain and everything goes in the right direction. And when the heart is crooked and is full of material desires, then intelligence, the mind, and the brain will be automatically perverted. That we see all the time. So it's the heart purification. This is a heart surgery we are doing in Krishna consciousness. That's the most difficult part. And surely it includes emotions. Yeah. So where do our emotions go? This is a question of development of transcendental knowledge. So there must be an intelligence, yes. And there must be also a thought, awareness of our desires, which are issuing from the heart. And we may have all kinds of desires coming up. We don't even know how many desires we are stored in a heart since thousands and thousands of lifetimes. We don't know what we are going to desire tomorrow. It just takes a certain favorable circumstance, a certain situation, and suddenly the heart, from the heart, issues a desire. Bop, it pops up like a bubble, out of nowhere. And suddenly you want that. And suddenly you go, yeah. We have the examples of, great devotees. I mean, classical example is Haridas Thakur, who in his young age was actually approached by a prostitute while he was chanting holy name. And there was so much temptation. But because his heart was full and emotionally he was absolutely grounded in Krishna consciousness, even the presence of that woman, of that young girl, didn't have any effect on him. I know devotees like that. You may not sing, you may sing a Chaitanya Charitamrita, yeah. But actually, I know devotees like that. I don't want to embarrass everybody, but one of my biggest friends, or actually the biggest friend I have, he's actually sannyasi. He told me a secret, He told me how in India, a woman at night broke into his room, and he woke up and there was a woman standing next to him. And I asked him, what did you do? And he said, well, he's always sleeping on the floor. This is a real sannyasi. He's sleeping on the floor. So he woke up, there was a woman standing next to him. So he said, I jumped up and I knocked her over and I ran out of the room. And my servant came immediately running. What happened? I don't think many men would do that. It's not, we don't know, I don't want to speak for everybody, but there are certainly men who would think, well, there's a woman here. Yeah. No, his response was completely spontaneous. He was not even fully, it was not planned, it was just happened. And I know examples of like that. I was for years on the street distributing Srila Prabhupada's books. Well, what you get to there to see, it will be an endless stories I could tell you to what kind of people we used to even distribute books. I used to distribute books to people who were not even dressed. The only problem was they couldn't give any money because they had nothing, they were not dressed. They had no pocket with wallet on it. But they found the money ultimately, and even being naked, they bought a book. I didn't plan for that. It just happened, So we end up in most bizarre situations, You are, my God, summertime, you are on the road. You are distributing the whole day on a street to girls. I was a brahmachari, for 17 years. Yeah, and just distributing books constantly to young girls who are smiling, and they are suddenly very, very spiritually interested, And then you are challenged all the time. Well, actually, we were so drowned by Prabhupada's mercy Nothing happened. No. Because we had such more important thing to do. Usually, how devotees do fall down? It is not because they are planning to do this. It's not like they are waking up in the morning and going, wow, today I would like to fall down. No. Why is it happening to them? Well, there are some symptoms always, like we already described, unrecognized and undefined material desires from thousands of previous lifetimes. But usually also it's very much inducing to fall downs. What helps to fall down is one is alone, no association. One becomes isolated. Therefore, Prabhupada started this movement. This movement is actually just the real meaning of this movement. It's not the International Society for Money-Making Consciousness. It's not the International Society for becoming famous or whatever. That you can do in the material world much easier. But it is an International Society for Krishna Consciousness, so we can come together and inspire each other to remember Krishna. So this association with devotees is very essential. Some or other, even using this internet channels, which normally internet can be extremely destructive, we know that. But all glory is the internet, and we can associate at least in this form. You cannot imagine what it means for me to be at least in this form in Africa. Maybe in this lifetime I will never make it to Africa, but at least just to be present in this form, it's wonderful. And even if how many devotees are right now watching, whatever, I don't know. But just to have that kind of association, to be able to glorify Srila Prabhupada, to be able to actually cultivate my emotions towards Krishna and Srila Prabhupada by sharing it with others. And by that, we don't have much time for that, but by getting also the right feedback back. It's both ways. As Prabhupada got instructed by his spiritual master, if you preach Krishna consciousness, it will be good for you, and it will also be good for others. So it's a mutual thing. It goes both ways. Whenever I come into some festival and I meet devotees, it's such an energy. You get immediately enlivened, because everybody you meet, someone or other remembers you on Krishna. And we may not like each other all the time. Yeah, that's a fact. That's also a very emotional thing very often. Actually, most problems amongst devotees are emotionally based. Not so much, yeah, there might be philosophical discrepancies. There may be all these kind of things. But very often the background, why we actually cannot properly associate and why we don't want to associate with somebody is an emotional thing. Someone, we used to call it in the old days the chemical problems. We just meet somebody and we go, nah, he looks strange. I don't want to be with him. Nah. But this is just purely emotional thing. Based completely on bodily consciousness. Like I'm sure if I would come to Africa, as for me, it's the same thing like going to India. I'm surrounded by people who act completely differently, who do things I don't understand really. But if they are devotees, well, immediately there's no problem, And as a matter of fact, I do travel a lot. So you develop a taste for this. You develop the taste how differently devotees relate to Krishna along also the place they are born in, along the country they are living in, and it's beautiful to watch this, Even I may not understand all of it, but the devotion behind the whole thing is easily understandable. And the determination to serve Krishna by any means. Now, you may not believe it, but when I joined this movement, 1972, hardly anybody believed you could ever go to Africa and preach there. It was like going to the moon, or I don't know, just nobody even talked about it. It was Brahmananda Swami, first time Prabhupada sent him there, because he was so heavy. Nothing could stop him. And there was the first pictures coming, Brahmananda jumping out of the van in the middle of African village and pulling out the medanga, and people coming out of the cottages and starting dancing. That was the first images from Africa I ever saw as a devotee. Otherwise, Africa was for me just about elephants and, it was just elephants and crocodiles. That's it. I didn't know anything about that. And nobody could even imagine so many devotees and nice devotees come from Africa. They were thinking, no, it was not just, I remember that. It was, nobody even talked about it. They're going, oh, Brahmananda went to the jungle in Africa or whatever, wow. But did he survive? Did he survive? Yeah. That was a mood those days. Nowadays, we have a completely different Africa. We have so much variety. I don't know anything about Africa, but I just know that there is a great, great variety of people there. How they look like, how they act like, and that's maybe different. But the devotion, when that manifests, that becomes so beautiful to watch this, yeah. I don't want to go into some psychoanalytic analysis, especially not with Africa, because I don't know anything about the place. But I met devotees from Africa in my lifetime, sure, coming to Europe, and they completely contradicted, the image of some African aborigines or whatever. Totally. This was a highly learned, intellectual devotees who were just amazing, just like very few I met in my life, but they were just amazing. So it is wonderful that Prabhupada did something so amazing. He made Krishna consciousness accessible to everybody in every corner of this world, regardless of his nature. And Prabhupada was quite aware. He was a very good analyzer. He knew very well the individual and the local nature of the people. And he knew also how to inspire it and connect it to Krishna. Most of my life I spent in Europe. So I could take you, yes, on some kind of psychoanalytical trips through Europe. Yeah. You will have probably a good laugh. And the devotees, when I provoke me to do this, they are usually laughing, but not for long, because it comes too close to reality, Because in every nation you find the good side and you find also the dangerous side, This is that we realize in Krishna consciousness. As we try to be better devotees, we also realize what the nice demons we can be too. We could, yes. We know how to be rascals. We know how to be. We have the lower nature built in there. We are born in that atmosphere. But we decided we will revolt. We actually revolt against ourselves. No, I will not be that kind of karmically designed person. I want to be a devotee. And a devotee, he is actually controlling his emotions. Devotee is not allowing himself to be subjected to the emotions and being ruled by them, possibly leading him in danger and also putting others in danger. So especially when one assumes a leading position, this is very dangerous. When one is emotionally compromised, one will be also compromised in judgment of those one is leading. This is very, very dangerous. Like people are emotionally attracted to those who, like, for example, confirm them. That can be dangerous, As Chanyaka Pandit says, actually, the intelligence of my enemies didn't harm me so much like the stupidity of my friends. That's a heavy statement. It's a heavy statement. And people go sometimes emotionally driven for association of those they can impress or rule over, dominate. But then they end up with the more foolish ones, and that creates actually a complete compromise situation. But Prabhupada, he was, he not only surrounded himself with very strong-minded people, but he also challenged us. Think about it. Do you understand? Do you understand? All the time he was challenging. You must understand. Use your brain. Yeah. Don't be just emotional. Actually, Prabhupada compared 100% emotional life with animal life. Because animals, they are just guided by instincts and by emotions. That's all. You can create an impression upon an animal just from emotional side. There is no logic, there is no reason, there is nothing of this. So Prabhupada didn't want us to be like that. He wanted us to ultimately, even it may result that sometimes devotees appear to be insensitive. I don't want to go now more in detail into this, but we have the great propagation of empathetic listening. Yes, this is a good thing. But how far you can empathetic listening to a profound fool on an idiot? There is such a thing. So you find exemplified by Srila Prabhupada that his ability to listen was not unlimited towards conditioned souls. Prabhupada said we came here to give Krishna consciousness. And some people, he said, we have nothing to learn from them. No, they are just stupid. That's all. Like he rejected the whole scientific community, not accepting one thing what they are saying, because he found them completely being compromised. Of course, we cannot imitate that, but listening, yeah. But listening should be conducted in a conducive way to actually increase our Krishna consciousness. And ultimately, our real emotion and real listening and real empathy goes towards Srila Prabhupada, where we get the most pure form of Krishna consciousness being served, and we can benefit from it wonderfully. So emotions are there, but they have to be guarded by Shastra, Guru, and Sadhu. Therefore, association of devotees is so beneficial because our emotional side will be automatically regulated and controlled. Yeah, maybe there is some questions or some feedback.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Can you hear me better now? Or it's still faint? Devotees, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes,
My hearing is not the best. I'm trying.
Yes, we are hearing you.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Well, dear devotees, we thank you all for being here as always. And our beloved uncle has spoken so beautifully, of course, as always. And if anyone may have comments, questions, realizations you may want to ask or share, please. You may indicate by using the hand emoji or your physical hand, and you'll be asked to unmute to speak or share. Well, Prabhuji, I have a couple of questions for you. First is if you may check in your chat box, there is a message in there for you, which we can discuss it later on. Next is, it's nice you shared with us the view of Africa to the Westerner. And you are 101% right. That is how lots of Westerners view Africa. That it's a very difficult place. It's a very hard place to go to. Like to be living in the jungles and things like that. That is what we hear from Western propagandists. But actually, that is not true at all. It's not true at all. But it's a propaganda. Unfortunately, we live in this age of information. So much about Africa can be gotten online, so people can see what's going on in Africa. But the question I have in this text and the delivery you so beautifully gave is, we know Vaikuntha is called Vaikuntha because there are no anxieties there. Here in this material world is Kunta because there are anxieties at every step. Now there is a lecture. Not a lecture. It was Srila Prabhupada was walking with some of his disciples, and there was a conversation. And one devotee was asking Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, if we have anxiety worshiping the deities, is that good? And Srila Prabhupada said, yes, spiritual anxiety is very good. Now, the question I am deducing from this statement is that in Vaikuntha itself, do the devotees there sometimes have anxiety in serving the Lord? Because Srila Prabhupada was saying that anxiety is very good. And in fact, he quoted one Acharya who sang that whenever you have the opportunity to have spiritual anxiety, no matter how much it costs, purchase it. It's good for you. And then he also shared, how do you purchase it? And the answer was, you purchase anxiety by anxiety. So my question to you is, in Vaikuntha planets, do the devotees sometimes have anxiety in serving the Lord satisfactorily?
Well, we have a description right away in Krishna book, how much anxiety is created by the invasion of demons for devotees. Now, this anxiety has one very, very good side to it. Whenever we are in anxiety, we are instinctively, materially or spiritually, doesn't matter. But in principle, whenever we are in anxiety, we are seeking shelter. We are looking for shelter somewhere when we are in anxiety. Solution, some shelter. And that, when directed towards Krishna, it's very good. So therefore, Krishna even may create a situation which puts us in anxiety, so we are more and more attached to him. We, like when devotees, I know this is natural. Prabhupada said it's a natural inclination of the conditioned soul. Whenever some sort of an enjoyment comes up, an idea of enjoyment, we don't take Krishna consciousness so seriously. But when anxiety comes, crisis, danger, whatever, creating situations, creating anxiety, we immediately induce to take shelter in Krishna. That's the nature of devotee. Yeah. So Krishna sometimes arranges such a thing. Why not? I mean, some dramatic thing. Sometimes, yeah, it's not like Krishna likes to give pain to devotee or something like this. But it is, I noticed, very not so often realized with devotees how little Krishna is really concerned with this body. I mean, concerning how many bodies we already had, and concerning how temporary this box is, this covering. It has a very great value right now, because right now we are communicating through the body. But for Krishna, seeing it from the perspective of eternity and our constitutional position being his eternal parts, this particular body is very superficial. It's very temporary, actually. So sometimes our emotions are directed towards the body, and then we get, so Krishna creates a situation where we have to get out of that bodily consciousness and take shelter in him. And this is ultimately the whole life is directed in that, it goes in that direction. As my friend and godbrother says, when you are young, the disease comes and goes. When you are old, it just comes. So the increasing pain of the aging body is actually for a devotee, inspiring him more and more to understand his defeat on a material platform and the absolute need to take shelter at Krishna's lotus feet. So this is all very conducive. Anxiety, yes. When the anxiety drives us towards Krishna and his lotus feet, and we take shelter in devotional service, so, yeah, great, why not? But devotees don't really organize anxiety. We try rather to eliminate. Prabhupada said one should be peaceful. But peaceful is again a term which may be also understood differently. Some people think peaceful means to sit down. Depends also which kind of varna you are operating from. For a Shudra, it's more peaceful, like everything is fine. We are sitting here, we are nice, we feel good. We are feeling good. Do you feel good? I feel good. That's the Shudra piece. Vaishya, he is more active. He goes, I feel very peaceful when things are expanding. I have the buying, selling, the enterprise. Then Vaishya is very peaceful, actually. Yes, it's a very nice business. It's very, for a Shudra, it will be agitating. For a Vaishya, it's peace. For a Kshatriya, his definition of peaceful, it's hard to understand for most of the people. Like when Kshatriya is completely challenged in the middle of chaos, and he is fulfilled in his duty to protect others, he is very peaceful. I mean, he can peacefully kill, he can peacefully organize, he can be peacefully in the middle of the complete chaotic situation. And he is he is very peaceful because he is properly engaged. And the Brahmana, he is peaceful when rationality and knowledge prevails. Then he is very peaceful. And when people come and learn from him how to actually solve things in a rational, in a shastrically based, rational way, then Brahmana is very peaceful. So anxiety is there, but there is always solution to it in Krishna consciousness. So we can use everything for Krishna, including anxiety. Is it somewhat answered?
Yes. Thank you so much for the answer, because there was one Sangha we had, and this topic came up, and some were saying that there is a spiritual anxiety in Vaikuntha, in Krishna Loka. And some said in Vaikuntha, there is no anxiety, but there is anxiety in Goloka. And some were saying that there is no anxiety in the spiritual world, period. So thank you so much for the explanation. But I am wondering why the discussion, if I may put the verse we're discussing today on the screen, I am wondering why Srila Prabhupada is helping us understand this theme, that the talks between Uddhava and Vidura on the topic of Krishna began at sunset. Why did Uddhava and Vidura have this topic discussed at sunset and not sunrise? And my speculative mind is telling me that there are certain times that may be very ideal for for a particular message to be passed on to have its optimum effect. So I don't know whether that is the reason behind why the talks between Uddhava and Vidura on the topic of Krishna began at sunset and not at sunrise or noon, or it was just coincidence.
So, shall I comment on something like that? Well, when we follow Srila Prabhupada's example, he showed us that in regards to discussion about Krishna conscious subject matter, there is no time limit, there is no time and place which is more suitable and less suitable. It's ahaituke apratihata. Actually, there is no material requirement for practicing Krishna consciousness. Or sometimes Prabhupada explains there is no material way to stop Krishna consciousness. So it doesn't require this material arrangements. However, we find in the Shastra lots of detailed descriptions how certain time of the day, certain time, certain places are more suitable. And that may be true. Yeah, sure. Like example, we go to India, and you go to Holy Dham, to holy place. Naturally, one will be more spiritually, you could say spiritually, emotionally inspired. My only question was always what we are going to do with that. Just being like emotionally inspired, it's nice, but what shall we do about this? And Prabhupada immediately taught us that once whatever spiritual emotion and spiritual inspiration we collect, we should instantly try to disseminate to others. Because this is actually a preaching movement. This is a Sankirtan movement. This means all together praising the Lord, spreading Krishna consciousness. So, and it is a quite natural thing. Therefore, we find the word miser is sometimes used. One should not be miserly. Whatever spiritual emotion and spiritual inspiration one can collect, one should try to disseminate it to others. And the interesting part is, when one does that, it will multiply. It will become bigger. If we just keep it for ourselves, that's nice. Okay. But it may not be it will not produce the same result like when we share it with others. So this is the essence of this movement. There are other movements where you can go and there's there's bhajan going on. They are more pointing to the, you could say, to the voyage inside, No, Prabhupada showed us that our insight and our spiritual life will be enhanced by giving it outside to others. This is the mood of Lord Chaitanya. This is what makes Lord Chaitanya's movement different from the movements from before, Vaishnava movements, Bhakti movements, but because it's a giving movement. It's a spreading, and the more we do that, the more we please Lord Chaitanya, the more we actually will be spiritually nourished and inspired. So the preaching is very important. And preaching doesn't mean one is to become a big philosopher. Preaching doesn't mean that one is to, actually Prabhupada warned us, he said this intimate pastimes of the Lord and these issues, this subject should not be preached publicly because people are not qualified for that. We have so much to give. We have so much to give just in all regards, just in the terms of logic, in the terms of, rationality. People are shocked. They sometimes meet the devotees, they expect him to be some religious, sentimental person. But when we start to ask questions, very down to the point, rational questions, like where does that life come from? Who are we? What is your identity? You know, this is heavy questions, because if you don't know who you are, then you are crazy. Yeah. Who is you actually? Yeah. And people get, so we have so much to say. This movement is carrying such an elementary and such an important message. We should stay with that. We should stay with the public, and we should just, especially if you want to bless people, give them Srila Prabhupada's books, because they are the concentrating thing, the concentrated knowledge, and everything what is there from the Guru Parampara. This is all concentrated in Prabhupada's books. So therefore, book distribution is not just some selling books or some business, not at all. It's the most elementary preaching. And you may be frustrated down the road because you find people are lazy, called mandan, lazy. They don't want to, they are satisfied with the superficial flow of things, superficial satisfaction of the senses. So it is a bit frustrating. Prabhupada never gave up. To the last moment of his life, he was pushing and pushing and pushing. We must preach. We must give it to others, whatever we have. And above all, chanting, prasadam, all this is practical things. Anybody can take part in this. So we have so much to give. So this is actually where our lives should be focusing on. And it is not depending on time, place, and circumstances. Now, they might be more favorable. Like Prabhupada said, chanting Hare Krishna, chanting our rounds. Prabhupada said morning time is the best. But that doesn't mean you cannot chant during the day. Or, they are by circumstances, especially those in Grihastha ashrama, they find themselves sometimes in difficult circumstances, maintaining the families, having jobs, and all kinds of things. So it's difficult, So the chanting can be done any time of the day, but Prabhupada says there is still a more favorable time of the day. That's the early time, Brahma Muhurta. Yeah. That's like an example. That's a very, very favorable time, So if we can, we should use that. Yeah. So they are, but ultimately, wherever we come together, wherever we sit down, wherever we remember Krishna, right now, I don't know what's the time in Africa, really, but here it's already, I'm sitting in Scandinavia, in Sweden. That's a place where it's right now it's just dark, it's just dark and not very inspiring spiritually, I have to say. I don't want to give you now description of what Scandinavia, particularly Sweden, is. I was living here mostly for 28 years, even I am absolutely not from this area. How I survived, I wonder until today, because it's really, you will not understand in Africa when I speak about Sweden. You will think I'm speaking about some other planet, yeah. It's so, everything is different. I meet even black people walking in Sweden. They walk like they fell out of the airplane, They are wondering, hey, where am I now? It's not just because it's cold most of the time, but people are so different here.
Yeah.
Extremely mental. You don't know what it is. One of my godbrothers coming here preaching, he said, there's earth, water, fire, ether. We know the elements, but in Sweden, there's only one element. That's the mind. That's it. It's so, they will push everything through the mind, And because, it's the atmosphere and the climate, it's a big empty place. I guess in Africa, where we go on the street, you meet some people. Who do you meet here when you go on the street? Nobody. There's nobody here. Yeah. And people sit right now in the houses. They sit at the light candle and they just sit at home. And they maybe watch the internet or something like that. But nobody talks to anybody hardly. Nobody sees anybody. To go here on the street and laugh loudly or look somebody in the eyes, it's shocking to people. They think you are mad. Yeah. I guess when you go to India, when you go to Africa, you go on a street, it's like you will be very personally noticed. I'm sure of that. I never was in Africa, but I think I have a little bit of nature like this. It wouldn't take me long to talk to some African people because they are just people, They are real people who are just looking at you, and it doesn't matter if they love you or hate you. It doesn't matter. I tell you, in Sweden, when the first person told me I hate you, I was ecstatic because I said, he saw me and now he hates me. That's wonderful, Anyway, Swedish people don't like when I speak like this, but I lived long enough here to tell you it's really different. This is just like an example. How do you preach in such an atmosphere? Well, nobody figured out until today, really. How do you preach here,
So
it's
very amazing how Sri Prabhupada's disciples were able to preach in these areas and make devotees.
Yeah.
Sri Prabhupada's mercy. Wow.
So this is also time, place, and circumstances. Certainly it plays a role.
Yeah.
But we don't have to pay too much attention to it.
Yeah.
We have to be, what else we should do? Wherever we are, we should actually try to practice Krishna consciousness and disseminate it to others, day and night. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, Prabhu, thank you so much. I asked this question because these days we don't do it as much, but I'm not all that old, but I'm not all that young either. But when we were growing up, our elders used to tell us stories, and these stories are like Vaishnava stories that have everything to do about life. Like they tell you stories how you can live in this material world and go through the bustling and the hustling nature of this earth and come out successful. And they usually tell us these stories at night, I should say after sunset. And I know some time ago in India also, on Sundays, they used to play Ramayana, Ram Katha on the TV. And they usually do that in the evening when everybody is kind of home, settled down. And when they watch these pastimes of Sri Ram, it kind of helps instill the knowledge and the discipline and the message of the Ramayana into the hearts of the audience. And in this way, lots of people became virtuous people. These days, they don't do that anymore. But the answer you gave is very satisfactory because depending on time circumstance, one may have to consider the best time to give something, but time should not be restrictive to what we can give, what we cannot give. But if I may ask my last question, and that is, I joined the devotional service years before, after you joined. I joined in early 90s, which is close to 20 years after you had joined. But even when I joined, this same energy was there. If you think about your families, you are condemned. If you have emotions, you are not serious. If you are a grihasta, you are already falling. If you live outside the temple, you are not a serious devotee. These days, we hardly hear such sentiments. So my question is, were we saying these things those days? out of immaturity, or it is what it's supposed to be, but in today's world, we've become so lapsed that we don't even talk about these things anymore. Which is which? Was it because we were not matured enough to understand that these emotions are part and parcel of the human nature, and therefore devotees may have these emotions, but like you rightly said, we should not have attachments to them? Or it is the way it's supposed to be, but in today's world, we've become so lapsed, so relaxed in our philosophy that we don't even talk about these feelings and emotions anymore. Which is which? Please help.
Well, the word immaturity was mentioned, and this is actually natural because it's like growing up. You know, there's a time in your life where the children usually, when they grow up, they try to create their own life, okay, their own life. So whatever it may be, but they look very obstinate. They are not very empathetic. They deal with feelings in a very, you could call it primitive way, yeah. That happens, or they don't even know how to deal with feelings. It's like puberty, it's a life where you are confronted, your body is changing. Actually, you are changing body, but you don't know what's going on. You cannot, especially when you don't have that culture. Culture is an important word. Culture where the elders will assist you because they went through the same changes. They know the flow of life. So one derives actually benefit by the wisdom of the elders. This culture is highly demolished nowadays. Practically doesn't exist. So so naturally, people are emotionally not in balance. But it's expected from a devotee when he gets older, especially when he's actively engaged in devotional service, on the basis of Srila Prabhupada's books, on the basis of this incredible knowledge we get, and also on the basis of what Prabhupada said. Because if you carefully listen what he is saying, he was always far ahead of us, like he was describing a society which will address all kinds of people, a society. He was preaching a society, a culture, but we were just a bunch of brahmacharis, young people who just were ready to die for him. Yes, the mood was there. We were ready to die for Prabhupada, but how to present Krishna consciousness? Well, we were lucky because we had Prabhupada's books. So we were just pumping the books, Even the way we distributed the books, we actually gave them up by kilos, by pallets and kilos, how many kilo of books we distributed. That was like the mood. Great, I emptied out the whole car, Actually, we didn't care much for people. People were just people with two hands who could buy a book. That's it. I was 18 years old, and the oldest member of the Yatra of the Hare Krishna movement I joined was maybe 21 years old. He was an old Vaishnava, So what do you expect from a gang of people like this? There was not much, but there was a great, great dedication, and but the spectrum and the dimension of the Prabhupada's vision could absolutely not be understood at that time. And Prabhupada was completely ahead of us. I give you an example. One of my godbrothers, I like to read his testimonies from my godbrothers from those days. And he said, he was quite shocked. Prabhupada said, we must preach, and this is, like this, great. But then they came already in a situation, they were buying some old church. I give you an example, okay? They're buying old church. So they were going, oh yeah, oh great. So now we have a big building here. We emptied out the church, and make a temple out of it. Prabhupada said, no. He said, look, there were people used to come to this church. They are still living here around, the same people. So you should keep the benches inside. This kind of benches, you knee down and you pray to Jesus. He said, you should keep it there. And just in front, we will have a Vyasasan. Yes, we can give a lecture. And people can come and pray and sit in the same benches they were sitting before, so they don't feel that we are like completely different, We keep the benches there. This is like an example, Devotees couldn't. Of course, they did remove the benches anyway, But the attitude of Prabhupada was like, was very broad actually, but not compromising. The Krishna consciousness was Krishna consciousness. But how is it presented to others? Prabhupada was incredibly universal in this regard. And nobody ever before him did anything like this, because he was preaching in an environment which was completely, different from India or places he grew up. I can imagine, I don't have the testimonies direct, from Africa, but there are so many things in Africa Prabhupada would not change. Why to change that if it can be implemented in Krishna consciousness? I cannot go more in detail because I never was there, but I'm sure that there are things which were just can absolutely be used. It's not like the whole Africa is useless and let's become now Krishna conscious, okay? Well, it doesn't work like that. It will never work like that. It's like, we are speaking here today, the questions about the spiritual world came up, Well, spiritual world is not like Africa, I know that. Africa is in a material world. But still, there are so many things in Africa I can use for Krishna consciousness. I know that, even without being there. I can give you some comments from devotees who were preaching in Africa, who told me how they were themselves surprised. What a potential of preaching is there in Africa. Not just intellectually, but even from the attitude. Varnashram Dharma. I give you an example, Varnashram Dharma. It was already there in Africa. You don't preach new Varnashram Dharma. You just point what is there. In a village, in a village was 4 classes of men. The working class, the farmer class, the guy with the spear, the Kshatriya, the fighting class, and then they had some Zulu Brahmana or whatever. Yeah? That was the man who people went to for advice. Whatever he did, whatever that was, it was another thing. But the system was already established. So why not just keep that and make it more Krishna conscious? This is just an example. Otherwise, I don't know really anything about Africa. But, so Prabhupada was very, very, very pragmatic, very, very broad-minded. So there are things we can use for Krishna, there are things we cannot use. No, we cannot use for Krishna. We have to give them up. So this is regarding how to practice Krishna consciousness according to the time, place, and circumstances.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. It's so beautiful sharing about the pragmatism of Srila Prabhupada, and we hope we can all try to learn from him and do as much. We have 2 hands up. His Grace Srimad Vara Prabhu, please, you may unmute. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu. August Srila Prabhupada, thank you very much for the wonderful discussion. I raised my hand because I thought I may have some input to the question that Prabhu asked. And I'm very happy the way you answered, explaining the mood of Prabhupada beyond what his followers could see at that time. So that kind of answered it. But still, I would like to make this contribution. That is question whether devotees were immature or is because the world has become more relaxed. I think it's none of those. The devotees who were preaching, they were living in the ashram. And the ashram system is not new. It's monastery system. It exists in other religions. The mistake we were making is thinking that Krishna consciousness is just about ashram life. And Prabhupada never said that. And that was one of the reasons why he mentioned that this mission is not complete unless there is Banashram. So that the devotees could understand that Krishna consciousness is not just about ashram living, but then the whole society. Prabhu has very nicely explained most of these things. So anyway, I hope we can make the link between what he's saying and the fact that it is not due to immaturity. They were preaching about ashram life, but everyone cannot live in the ashram. You need other aspect of the society also. You need the nurses, doctors, businessmen. We need them. So Prabhupada never said that everyone should live in the ashram. But that was a mistake many people are living until today. Many of our devotees are still thinking of the ashram concept of Krishna consciousness.
Actually,
So that's my contribution.
What we remember is that Prabhupada said ashrama situation is very conducive. It's a training field. But if you consider like the situation I joined in, an 18 years old boy, and most of us were like this. So for us to actually join an ashram was very simple. It was a simple thing. We had no further responsibilities as to just to place our bodies in such a situations and perform devotional service. It was wonderful. I don't regret 1 minute of it as a training. Now, Prabhupada made already those days very clear that this is just a training. Now, if you listen to the word training for what? Well, to spend the rest of your life in Krishna consciousness. Later on, we had generations of devotees coming who were coming already in the grihastha or family situation in that regard. I tell you, it was very difficult for devotees. There was actually a crisis in ISKCON. One of the first big crises came up when devotees start to get married. And Prabhupada facilitated that. So now, suddenly there was no ashram, grihastha ashram, but that looked very different, like the brahmacharya ashram. So there was then question raised, who is better or more spiritually situated? And it became very tense, you know. Prabhupada was supposed to be the judge of these two parties, you know, grihastha and brahmachari. Prabhupada refused to do that. He never allowed himself. He said, well, the ultimate level is devotional service. So this is the measurement. And it was nowadays to even discuss that, I don't know the situation in Africa, but to discuss this in Europe, it's almost irrelevant. I mean, it's really, I don't see much of ashramas in Europe at all. Most devotees operate from the grihastha situation. And this is a question of, again, the word maturity. Maturity is an important word. That it's a way to grow mature in Krishna consciousness. If done responsibly, like those who think they enter grihastha ashrama for heightened level of enjoyment, they must be suicidal or they must be masochistic or I don't know what. Any honest grihastha will tell you, no, this is just the increased level of austerities, you know, because you have certain responsibility for others and you must be responsible. The word responsibility was very much preached by Prabhupada in connection with grihastha ashrama. You know, so this is all different stages of Krishna consciousness, ultimately. So we should not neglect if there is a possibility. Brahmachari ashram training is very good, but we have, as I mentioned before, Prabhupada preached culture. He preached society on a large scale. So nowadays we have people joining or coming around who are, in many regards, materially spoken, also very mature and much more experienced as some young boy who just joined and is in Brahmacharya ashram. So we can derive benefit from that too. Everything, everybody. So it's a larger scale nowadays, as it was in the beginning. It's natural. That's how things evolved. And it's a natural development. Now, one thing should not oppose the other, or one thing should not be neglected. When I travel around, I am in favor of any brahmachari I meet on the street distributing Prabhupada's books and being fully engaged in preaching. Wonderful. But most brahmacharis nowadays, they are fully aware they will not stay brahmacharis. They know that. They know that. They are just more or less preparing themselves to responsibly enter the Grihastha ashrama. That's basically what happens. That's the reality of the whole thing. And then there are those who already joined in this situation, sometimes also very mature devotees. So this discrimination and this discussion about who is, you could say it, even more spiritually advanced, I find it quite irrelevant because it doesn't correspond to the reality whatsoever. Finally, Prabhupada made whoever remembers Krishna, whoever tries to be part of Srila Prabhupada's and Krishna's mission, whoever is engaged in Krishna consciousness, regardless of his ashrama, he will prevail. And that's ultimately the lesson one gets on the road when one travels around, So I personally, I don't even take part in such a discussions. What is better? What is this? And we have nowadays, I would say, other problems. There's some. Is it okay?
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Yes. I don't know if Shimabara Prabhu is still there and wanted to say something, but Madhava Prabhu, did you have your hand up? We have a few more minutes.
Okay, just briefly. Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you very much for your wonderful lecture and
Thank you.
for giving us your time. Okay, so I'm sure you are very happy seeing us Africans. Just what I want to say is that African culture is very similar to Vedic culture. There's a lot of similarity. African culture is very similar to Vedic culture. And even our religion also. We are used to deity worship, and then we're also used to dancing. If anything can happen, you see people, they will join you, at least they will dance. And our life, we relate with each other more than any other type of people. So Africa is just like any other place. You have good people, we have bad people, but generally, we live more of communal life. And our culture, our tradition, our religion is very similar to the Vedic. So that's just what I want to say. Briefly. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. So if I can come out with my follow-up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing I would like to say, thank Prabhu. Thank you for your answer. But one thing I would like to say is, if I'm correct, I heard that Srila Prabhupada did say that we should manage Islam like Catholicism. We should copy management of the style from Catholicism and keep our philosophy. So I figure out that what Prabhupada saw as a similarity with Catholicism is the fact that they also have kind of ashram where they have reverend fathers living in the monastery, and then they have the congregation. So I mean, it's been one of those things that Prabhupada must have seen, that he said, run ISKCON like, in this Catholic style, but keep our philosophy. So that is one other contribution I'd like to make. So people don't join the monastery in Catholic Church thinking that they are preparing to get married again. So that is, we have not been able to distinguish and make people understand. If you enter monastery life, you enter monastery life. People enter into the temple life or monastery life, ashram life, and they are expecting all the facilities and lifestyle to be like when they are living ordinarily, and that is wrong. That doesn't go with the philosophy. So there's a problem in understanding, the divisions, based on the culture, the philosophy exactly. So, like you said, in Europe, people are joining now and just thinking that they're preparing to get married. So, what are you going to the monastery for in the first place if you really think that you want to get married? The monastery lifestyle means that you want to go and serve God, you want to give your life to God. So, this misunderstanding is there and it's still going on. There's a whole lot of misunderstanding about how Prabhupada wants ISKCON to function. And it is not that it is a new thing, it exists already in other culture and in other systems. So we complicate things ourselves by, wanting to make ISKCON look like what, Prabhupada did not intend. Hare Krishna.
I don't know to what degree I'm still supposed to say something additionally to that. I think much of this was already said. That first of all, monastery is for some permanent. Why not? Not everybody has to and must get married. But we know very practically that those who are happily, I would stress the word happily, living in celibacy are very few. So Prabhupada was very much in favor of temple life. But again, as a training field, as an inspirational field, but of course, his plans to spread Krishna consciousness were reaching far beyond that. And it happened anyway. So, like I said, nowadays, when I travel around and all this is the temples actually, speaking for Europe, they are struggling greatly with the ashramas and with the monasteries, greatly. It's hard to find somebody who can live there because most of the people, it's evident that they are meant to, if in a decent way, being situated, then it's in the Grihastha ashrama. So, but why to rule something out and something Prabhupada gave? Why not just cherish that and give chance to people? It's a chance. Why not? If somebody is qualified, but he has to follow the rules and he has to be a real monastery resident as much as he has to be a real family man. When everything one does responsibly, it's always difficult. It's not easy. It doesn't come for free. It has its price to it. So Prabhupada, therefore he called the word ashrama. That's actually the uniting word. It's the brahmachari ashrama, it's the grihastha ashrama, and then comes the other ashramas. So it's ashrama still. That means life dedicated to God. And that's what Prabhupada ultimately established as the ultimate principle. Yeah. Otherwise, I could go now more in detail and become even autobiographic. I went through these ashramas, let's say, from Brahmachari to Vanaprastha. It was not all my plan. And I did things ultimately I had to do. Not what I wanted to do, but what I had to do. So we have to do the needful and live a dignified life Prabhupada gave us. And who belongs where, that will be visible. But Prabhupada warned us, he said, don't assume a wrong ashrama just for social appearance or just for or financial benefits or whatever you may get from that. Don't do that. But it's just to be real. We want to be a real brahmacharis, we want to be real grihastas, real sannyasis, and finally real vanaprasthas and real sannyasis. So this is what will make our preaching potent. Otherwise, being just, you could say, physically located in a particular situation, that alone will not save us.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Yeah,
for your love and wisdom. And dear devotees, here is where we're going to end today, and we're going to humbly request you all to kindly unmute. And
there's a question in the chat room.
There's a question in the chat room. Let me see. Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Otherwise, if somebody wants some more detailed questions and exchanges, I have my webpage and I have my emails. I guess we have the connection eventually if you want. I am answering everything, whatever somebody is addressing me, so I'm quite communicative. So one can also have a contact in this way.
Okay. All right, so we'll do that the next time then. But there was a question, but we'll leave that. I think we'll leave that for another time. So, dear devotees, we're going to humbly request you all to kindly unmute, and we all chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to express our appreciation to our revered speaker, our revered uncle, His Grace Manidhara Prabhu, for sharing his love and wisdom with us this very day, Monday, first day of the week. Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Vancha kalpa tarayasya Nantakoti Vaishnavrinda ki